Hey guys, and yeah, it's good to be back. It's been 14 days on an epic safari adventure. I've thoroughly enjoyed each and every moment that I've shared with Zach and Lacey. Yeah, Zach and Lacey came out from Baghdad, Arizona, to embark on one of their first adventures in the safari on the Dark Continent. So it was part of the Mule Deer Foundation package. Myself, PH Journals, loves to always give back to conservation. And one of the ways which we could have done that was through the Mule Deer Foundation banquet, where we auctioned off a package where Zach and Lacey happily bought. Yeah. Before I get into the recap and, of course, the topic we're going to discuss today, there's one quick thing I would like to address and get that out the way, is that I want to take this opportunity to thank Scully's. I just want to thank them for all their incredible work that they've done and been a part of my journey. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end. Our road has somewhat come apart. And I just want to thank them for each and everything that they've done for me. There's no hard feelings or anything as we speak. I'm having a bunch of skulls done, and I'm really looking for the outcome of that. They have my full support on anything they want to do. They've got an incredible product and they've got an incredible idea that they want to get involved within the industry. And I would love to support them in any way, shape, form, or possibility that I can going forward for the future. However, like I said, all things come to an end, and I want to thank them for their participation in the podcast and in past activities that we've done together. So once again, just a huge thank you to each and every single one of them. And then without further ado, of course, the relevant and the guys that have stuck behind me through day one: Splitting Image, Taxidermy, Trees and Camo, Magnum Archery, did I say Splitting Image, Taxidermy? Did I say it? Can't remember. Anyway, Splitting Image, Taxidermy, and then the Love Tires Group. Just thank you for all the support and everything you guys have done for me. I really, really, really appreciate it. So our 14-day safari started on the 5th of May. It was an epic adventure. Lacey and Zach would have been their first time to the Dark Continent. And like mentioned before, Zach was adamant to get one of the spiraled horn species with a bow, which was a task in itself. Those of you that have hunted the Dark Continent before would know the immense difficulties that it takes with hunting the spiraled horn animal, just with the rifle, nevertheless a bow. I mean, it's the next level, but Zach being driven and motivated more than ever before, he headed out. Unfortunately, no successful shots, but no animals were harmed or anything was left injured. However, he did get a beautiful invaluable together with a kudu bull on the same day with the rifle. So, yeah, just what an outstanding adventure. I learned so much on this hunt, and there were two takeaways that I took from it. Number one is going to be the topic that we're going to discuss tonight. And that's all about thermal hunting. And number two, I understood something very quickly. Jeff Tobile Ngetu, he's been my tracker now for a couple of years. He's a driven hunter. He's enthusiastic about hunting. He's enthusiastic about conservation practices and doing things ethically. He recently just acquired his professional hunting license, and I took the opportunity to introduce him into the hunting industry while I was on the hunt. So he's been my tracker for some time now. And the goal and the obligation we had to one another is that we were always going to grow within the company. And I really wanted him to take this opportunity and run with it. And what better way to actually hand over to him with a client that was as accommodating as what Lacey was. So we came up to the opportunity, and I crossed paths with him, and I said, look, Jeff, the red hearted beast, I mean, Jeff's been hunting with me now. We know each other like second nature. a red hartebeest, I handed over fully to him. What I realized in that hunt was it's especially when it's your own company and it's your own persona, your own image. You never know if you've done enough to, and I don't like the word groom, but you never know if you've done enough to educate the gentleman that's going to be taking the reins at that specific time, whether you've done enough to represent you and represent the industry as best as possible. And what I mean by this is that I found myself a lot of the time on a stalk or something because I took a bit of a back seat. And as you can tell, I'm moving a little bit like a robot at the moment. I've messed up my C6 disc in my neck from all the years of playing contact sport and lifting dead weight for a lot of the time. But I took a bit of a back seat, but I was still trying to negotiate and manipulate the situation in a way that he would do it my way. And one thing I realized very quickly, that each hunter, there is no right or wrong when you're out there hunting. There's basic ethics, morals, and values that you can follow, but there's no right or wrong way of how you want to hunt those specific animals. You can take what you've learned from the industry, implement it into your walk, into your stalk, into the way you feel fit, necessary to hunt those specific animals. Because I found myself not once, not twice, but a couple of times turning around to him and saying, Jeff, you know what, you're doing this wrong. When I had to look back at myself, because the results, I mean, those of you that have followed me on social media would see that the results speak for themselves. Jeff and Lacey landed a beautiful, magnificent red hartebeest, and the hunt was absolutely outstanding. However, I felt like I hindered that opportunity a hell of a lot. And what I mean by that is that I was extremely judgmental because of all the years of how I've wanted to do things, how I've perceived things to be done. When I realized that, you know what, hang on, yeah, this is a gentleman that's I'm giving him the opportunity to hunt these species the way he's always learned how to hunt, or seen other individuals hunt them and would have liked to hunt it a different way. And I found myself doing these things back and forth. No, you're doing it the wrong way. No, you shouldn't go. Yeah, you should go. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're boxing against the elements. He's facing his own elements and his perception on how this hunt needs to unfold. And I needed to trust that more. So this hunt was a pretty unique hunt for me because, in essence, I learned so much, not only about myself, but also how I've been doing things. And of course, every hunting safari, I want to take away a lot of positives. I'll be the first person to admit that I'm not an individual that will go out there and say, guys, listen, I know everything. What you're doing is wrong. What you're saying is wrong. I want to learn because I know my fellow hunters out there. The way they hunt animals in the northern hemisphere is completely different to how they do it down here. How Jeff perceives a stalk on a red hartebeest is completely different to how I would. So what I wanted to take away from this hunt was actually understand that, wait, hang on, yeah, there's no right or wrong. If you feel that this is the best possible opportunity for us to harvest or hunt these animals ethically and morally correct, then who am I to judge whether you're doing it right or wrong? And once I perceived that, once I realized that, and I came to that realization, I actually kind of sat back, and on the video you'll see that I had to force myself to stand a few yards back because I needed to entrust in him and let him take the reins and understand that this is what he's going to do. And, you know, if it lands up in a bust stalk or in a frustrated situation, or they didn't load the bullet or something, a missed opportunity, that is the opportunity for him to learn from those mistakes. So that was something I learned and I took away very, very quickly on the hunt. And it will stick with me for a very, very long time, because ultimately Jeff did a superb job on the hunt. And yeah, I'm very, very proud of how things worked out. Yeah, and then Zach and Lacey. Lacey nailed her beast slam. They walked away with a couple of extra animals, but an experience for myself and Jeff, and I'm sure for them, that would last a lifetime. And that's ultimately what the goal is to try and build a brand and build a facility that people can come to and understand that they're doing this for conservation, but not only for conservation, they're doing this to build relationships and build an understanding, a better understanding of how we can better our industry this side, and ultimately save species for future generations to come. And I think we ticked all those boxes on the safari. It was an exceptional safari. It really, really was. We were based on the outskirts of Queenstown in the Eastern Cape. Fantastic facilities. The food was good. And it really just boiled down to, it was not a rustic stay, but a stay that I've always valued growing up. Proper full meals at night, and not fancy Michelin chef cooking stuff, just homey good meals that everyone went to bed with a full tummy, memories, and a vocabulary full of stories and things that we can take away for future generations. However, they're still planning on coming back in 2025, so we've done something right, and that's been my goal, ultimately, to represent the industry of hunting in South Africa as best as I possibly can. And I said it many, many times, and I've said it and I'll say it again. The hardest thing for me in this industry is to understand that people see it as a competition, when ultimately we all want the same thing. There are a few outfitters out there that are doing this all for the right reasons, that are prepared to help one another through difficult times, prepared to share information with one another. But there are outfitters out there that just want your head, and they see you as a physical and a business threat and a business transaction threat. And that was hard to accept this time around, because that's not my goal. My goal is for individuals to come out, utilize my services, but give them a best overview on hunting in South Africa as I possibly can. Because next time when they come back, they might not come back with me, they might go with another outfitter, but I don't want them to have a shadow over South Africa because of a bad experience that I botched. So ultimately, we ticked all the boxes. Everyone's walked away with an extremely memorable hunt under the belt, and that one I'll hold very, very dear to my heart. So yeah, getting into tonight's topic. One of, like mentioned before, one of my goals as a professional hunter is never to stop learning. I never want to stop learning. I always want to be able to take something away and be able to look back at it. And yes, behind all the cameras, behind all the followers, the subscribers, the YouTube channels, all that sort of stuff, is a hunter that I represent, and I believe that I know a fair amount about the industry and about how hunting and conservation is conducted in South Africa. However, I am not going to admit that I know everything about hunting and that you guys should all listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. No, I want to learn from you guys. And I learned a lot on this hunt. And one of the big things I take away from this, and I will have him on the podcast, I will have Zach on the podcast to discuss more about it. And I don't know if I'm actually not embarrassed, but I'm kind of disappointed in myself for the fact that I've never used this technique a lot sooner in my career. And to be quite frank with you, I only really became aware of it when I started training my dogs for scent and not blood. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about thermals. Hunting using thermals and thermals to your advantage. So in a nutshell, what can I tell you about thermals? Well, from what I've understand, all the YouTube videos I've just recently spent myself indulging in, my conversations with Zach, and what I know from training my dogs is that it's very, very simple. If you look at it, hot air rises, cold air descends, and when we look at the broader picture, early morning, the land and the air is heating up. So the air and the scents and the smells are all going to be rising. And in the evening, when the temperature drops, everything's going to start cooling down. Everything comes back down and starts descending. And where I found this was important now we need to understand that animals have been using thermal energy to, number one, avoid predators, and number two, understand where dangers are. So it's never really occurred to me why a lot of our species seek refuge along the mountainsides. I've always thought big kudu bulls, they're hitting the sun in the early morning, and that's just to stay out of the cold. But more than likely, they are using that heat that is generated from the sun through the earth to divert their thermal energy as quickly as possible up into the sky, so that predators from either above or below cannot scent them. So they're trying to disperse their thermal energy as quickly as possible, and vice versa. They're trying to pick up on the thermal energy that's flowing up the ridge line from the bottom. So if there's a lion or a predator below, and they're releasing the same amount of thermal energy as the land is heating up, the kudu or whatever the prey may be along the side of the mountain sides would pick up on that energy, would pick up on that scent, and therefore avoid getting eaten ultimately. And as I played back in my head, and Zach mentioned this to me and on like day 2 or 3 of it, and you pay attention to it and you're like, what is this actually all about? And when you lie in bed and you're planning out your next day, you reminisce back on a lot of the botched hunts that had happened, not just within that safari, but previously, right? You're like, why did that kudu bust me? There was no ways. I was dead set. I had a good vantage point. I was coming in from the bottom. When all these different factors align, a lot of the times that this had happened was because of thermal energy. The thermals rising from the bottom that were unbehold to me. If I had to look at it from a nutshell, if there was no wind or anything, my first perception was there's no ways that it could have raised that much. However, with the amount of heat and the energy dispersed through the air, your thermals will be picked up for miles and miles and miles. And where I found this out is when I started training my dogs. This was when I was first introduced to thermal energy. When I was training my dogs, I used to get frustrated. I used to, be hard on them. Why aren't you guys following the blood? Why aren't you just sticking to the route? Just, there's blood drops here. You can see them. They're out in the open. When you start training a dog, you don't put any cover or anything over them. They're out in the open. Why aren't you guys following that? And the more I understood, and I went down to a gentleman where I bought my German Shorthair Pointer from, and he's by the name of Todd from Canine Training, and he said to me, no, we stop with the blood, and we work on thermal energy, and we work on thermal scenting. So what we do is, in between the animal's hooves are scent glands that release a lot of, when they're in danger, they will release a hormone, normally adrenaline or something like that, and we actually dragged it through the bush on the top of the grass. And during the morning, the scent was so tight that the dogs followed a very tight pattern. The zigzags weren't as big as what they were that we saw in the afternoon. So when they picked up the scent, the zigzags were very short, and they kind of picked up on a general direction of the scent, and then they would find it. In the afternoon, it was vice versa. In the morning, the zigzags were big. In the afternoon, the zigzags were a lot tighter because the air was cooling down. There was more pressure coming down from the atmosphere with colder air and tightening up the scent at the bottom. So the zigzags were a lot smaller. And so now when I release my dogs, it's not, the first spot is point of contact. And then if there's nothing that they are picking up from an adrenaline point of view, then we'll find a spot of blood and then let them pick up on that scent, and then they work. And that was the interesting thing for me, is that I learned that a couple of years ago, but I never implemented it in my hunting techniques. And I don't know if it's embarrassing. It's just something I've never paid close attention to. But now I am. Now I'm hunting thermals. So a lot of the time in a lot of different scenarios, I would map my stalk a lot differently. A lot of the time, especially with big eland bulls, they can cover vast distances very, very quickly. You take the precautionary route and you want to get underneath them rather than over and above them, because when they hit that bottom flats and they set sail, they can run 2 or 3 valleys over before you even get to have another opportunity with them. So my idea was always to bump them from the bottom and push them up into the mountainside, so that generally speaking, when an animal runs uphill, it will always run a couple of yards and then stop, turn, look back, and it'll give you like a 30-second period or even less. 10 to 15-second period for you to put into that shot. But so the challenge was always getting in close enough so that when they do bust out, that you are close enough as far as a rifle is concerned to pull off those ethical shots. Now I'm going to approach it completely different. Early mornings, I'm approaching from the top, and late evenings, I will approach from the bottom. And now it's a game changer, right? Because now you've put this into your arsenal of planning and understanding and wanting to make sure that you can become the best possible hunter for different scenarios as you possibly can. And a lot of people might say to me, well, you know, as a professional hunter, you probably should have known this. And I probably should have. But incorporating different techniques constantly for different scenarios is what makes you a good hunter. A lot of the time, and this is kind of what I said to Zach, is that a lot of the time, because of our situation as far as land is concerned, a lot of the boundaries are monitored along the top of ridge lines or whatever it may be. So when positions and when opportunities do come, you've always had to box different scenarios. It's no excuse to not using it. It's just whenever you've come up with an opportunity to utilize from the top down technique, a lot of the time you either may have to go over into neighbors' felts or cross borders, whatever it may be, and it gets a little bit dicey. However, I'm going to be using it, and it's going to be at the forefront of my planning and my understanding as far as hunting is concerned. And yeah, again, guys, I wanted to walk away from this safari knowing that not only did I give a good representation of hunting how South Africa is, but I also wanted to walk away joining a fellow hunter that understood exactly what hunting. I mean, it was very admirable of Zach on how he handled things. I mean, our kudu hunting was extremely frustrating. 2 or 3 missed days where we didn't get a single animal down. But that's hunting. That's all about the experience that we want to deliver as professional hunters, and make sure that people understand that. You know, that when you come out here to South Africa, it's not what you see on the YouTube channels, that it's a day or two and then you've got a big kudu bull down. No, it's hunting. You're going to be hunting a kudu bull for 2 or 3 days. A lot of effort, a lot of driving, a lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights. And I think we can walk away from that with a very good account of that. And I've learned so much. So much. The thermal energy and the thermal scenting on how to hunt that has, again, I always knew it was there, but I never implemented it into my hunting strategies. And something so simple but so impactful. Because let's face it, the animal kingdom, the animals we hunt have got some of the best noses out there, right? I mean, that's what they built to run away from some of the most apex predators on planet Earth. I mean, lions, wild dogs, cheetahs, leopards. I mean, these animals are next level. And we've had to learn now to adapt and become the apex predator. And the way to do that is by implementing the basic strategic methods on hunting these animals. And that's probably one of the most important things that I want to implement now in my hunting going forward. So, yeah, like a good friend always said to me, and I think I've said it 1,000 times on this podcast, a successful PH 70 to 80% of the time, it's all about planning. So plan your next move the next day, and now you can plan it using thermal energy and a better understanding in that. And I hope I've made sense tonight with explaining exactly what my takeaway from the thermal energy and the thermal sense are concerned. It's very, very simple, guys. Early morning, ground heating up, hot air rises, so the thermal energies are going away and they're rising. Late evenings, the air is cooling down, condensing, everything's coming down to ground. So early morning, hunting over and above, late evening, hunting from the bottom up. That's a very simple and basic way of putting it. I'm not saying you need to implement it that way every single time, but be conscious about that going forward now into your next stalk. So I'm looking forward to it. I just can't wait to get out there and test this new thermal energy by having it like constantly engraved or become more aware of it in my stalks going forward. So guys, I hope that podcast helped everyone out there for a better understanding on what your next technique can be as far as thermal energy is concerned. I've got some exciting things planned. I've got a very, very exciting guest, which we have scheduled for after the 10th of June. I'm really looking forward to this one because I don't want to give too much away, because it's been a long time coming, and I've waited for precisely the correct moment to have this individual on the podcast. And I think my timing is just right, because we're heading into the crucial times of our industry. There's a lot of uncertainties out there at the moment, with the South African elections coming up now on the 29th and the American elections coming out at the end of the year. A lot of people are doing a yo-yo act at the moment. We've seen a lot of hunts being postponed, cancelled, transferred to next year. So yeah, it's kind of a delicate time in the year for outfitters, professional hunters, but it's also, there's no consistency out there. So I'm really looking forward to this episode. Next week, I'm heading off into the Midlands, into KwaZulu-Natal. I'll be chasing the common rebuck. It's one that I've had on my bucket list for some time now, and I'm really looking forward for this opportunity. And then, of course, we've got the kudu hunts back home. Like mentioned earlier, we donate quite a bit back into conservation, and part of my plan of donating back this year was participating in the Vleis Central in the Smithsphere auction at Large School Hunt Club, which was a couple of weeks ago. I purchased 2 kudu bulls, which I'm pretty excited about. We actually saw a bunch on the property we're going hunting. So first day of open season, you know where I'm going to be. which is coming up on the 1st of June. I'm excited about that one. So yeah, guys, once again, podcast is back up and running. We will be back in studio next week. I'm really looking forward to that one. Hopefully I'll have a couple of more ideas and tips and tricks I get to share with you guys. So yeah, once again, to everyone, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and if this episode you enjoyed it, drop a thumbs up. It means a lot to me, and it's probably the only thing I'll ever ask you guys to do. So I really appreciate all the support. But from myself, if you are, happy hunting. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay humble. We'll catch up with you guys soon. Cheers.